as the Universal Declaration of Human Rights.
It came from the War Aims campaign of 1939. It had been translated into about 40 or 50 languages and circulated around the world for commentary. Wells thought this should be part of the United Nations organization, and Eleanor Roosevelt proposed it in a modified form, somewhat modified, not much, and it was adopted and is part of the Charter, the Universal Declaration, which was Wells's originally, is part of the UN Charter.
Wells's many books and articles, his ideas about the future, and the accuracy of many of his predictions brought him prominence beyond the fame of popular authors. He became a kind of international guru, consulted by great personages. He met with the likes of Lloyd George, Henry Ford, Franklin Roosevelt, and Shirley Temple.
This is why he's difficult to classify, because he became, depending how you look at it, much more or much less than a writer. He became a world figure.
Wells believed passionately in the idea of one world and one world government. For years he preached his vision of a global society at peace, where distinctions of race and class will give way to those of merit. During World War II, he proposed that the emerging victors, America, the Soviet Union, and Great Britain, worked together to enforce global peace.
If they took possession of the air, as they are quite capable of doing, nothing could withstand them. They could take the air out of politics, out of international affairs, and lay the foundations for a world peace that would endure forever.
That wasn't quite what happened, of course. Wells's fellow human beings seemed as ill-suited to peaceful cooperation as his fictional Martians, and they had come to conquer. During the Martian invasion, the hero figures the safest place to be is in the aliens' ruined wreck. He follows their machines toward London, passing through miles of devastation on the way. He meets another survivor, the curate of a local church, and they continue together. The two men take shelter for the night in a deserted house. Suddenly the house caves in, hit by the crash landing of a Martian spaceship. The two men survive, but are trapped, and through an opening in a crushed wall, they witness the Martians' dietary habits.
They did not eat, much less digest. They took the fresh, living blood of other creatures and injected it into their own veins. I cannot bring myself to describe what I could not endure, even to continue watching. The bare idea of this is no doubt horribly repulsive to us, but at the same time I think that we should remember how repulsive our carnivorous habits would seem to an intelligent rabbit.
The men notice a strange red weed growing beyond the wall. Apparently something the Martians brought with them. Trapped for 2 weeks in that ruined house, they begin to learn more about this new species come to dominate the future. The Martians do not sleep, and so they are able to work round the clock. And they do not know what illness is, there having been no microorganisms on Mars.
In the next place, wonderful as it seems in a sexual world, the Martians were absolutely without sex, and therefore without any of the tumultuous emotions that arise from that difference among men.
The author of those words was quite familiar with tumultuous emotions. If many Victorians were inhibited about sex, H.G. Wells was not one of them. He challenged that starched convention with, so to speak, a passion.
Well, certainly did know a lot of women. It was one of the things that writing and success brought him. And what's more, women liked him very much, and after they had been his lovers, they often remained his friends. They said he smelt of honey.
H.G. Wells explored his sexual urges with a legendary number of women. Wives, lovers, friends, and flings. He later explained his insatiable appetite as a search for his lover shadow. It began with his cousin Isabel. He married her, but Isabel quickly proved sexually and intellectually disappointing.
Now, a second person came into Wells's life, and this is the woman we know as Jane, or Annie Catherine Robbins, as she was, her real name was. She was a student in Wells's laboratory.
So Wells divorced Isabel, married Amy, whom he inexplicably insisted on calling Jane, and went to work. From 1895 to 1898, he wrote frantically, launching his writing career with 3 of his most famous novels: The Time Machine, The War of the Worlds, and The Island of Dr. Moreau. Married bliss, however, soon wore thin, and Wells began chasing shadows again. By all accounts, Jane knew of his affairs and accepted them.
There was one occasion when 2 rival mistresses, went to see H.G. Wells' wife and said, "I want to be your husband's lover. No, I want to be your husband's lover." And she had to judge, Solomon-like if you like, who would be her husband's lover.
It was a turn-of-the-century soap opera. Was this man, who loved so many women, a feminist or a rogue, a free spirit or a wink? A number of his lovers were impressive, dynamic women. They admired him, they bore him children, they kept in touch with him long after their affairs ended. The most important of these was the novelist Rebecca West. The 2 loved and quarreled for 10 years.
Wells once shouted out, "You're too ugly to meet my friends." He treated her in the most appalling way. When they had a child, he refused to see the child and just packed Rebecca and the little boy off to the countryside.
But she also, the day after he died, wrote to his daughter-in-law and said, "You and I both know that I loved him every day of my life."
But sexual gratification and emotional commitment appeared to be 2 more worlds at war within this man. In the War of the Worlds, more than people and buildings are destroyed. Institutions, too, are leveled. Organized religion takes a direct hit to the person of the curate. Under severe stress, the curate loses his nerve and finally his mind. He begins to rant loudly, forcing on the hero a grim necessity.
The curate is the weakest of the weak. He gives in. The narrator has to kill him, in fact, because he's going to reveal all to the fighting machines. And the curate is a person who, first of all, tries to rely on God and then finds that fails him. And so he doesn't have anything to rely on except run around. He's the epitome of the rabbit, in fact, in the metaphor.
On the 15th day of his imprisonment, the narrator wakes up and discovers, to his astonishment, that the Martians are gone. He steps out of the shattered house and gazes across a landscape empty except for the Martians' red weed. It seems to be everywhere.
I felt the first inkling of a thing that presently grew quite clear in my mind, that oppressed me for many days. A sense of dethronement, a persuasion that I was no longer a master, but an animal among animals, under the Martian heel. With us it would be as with them, to lurk and watch, to run and hide. The fear and empire of man had passed away.
Alone now, the narrator resumes his grim journey toward London. As he passes the fearful leavings of the Martians, a sort of guilty recognition sees